It's happening. So it's been a whole year since my last video, and I've dragged myself back for another collaboration. This time it's called One Diamond Story, and it's to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the show as a whole, but more importantly, it's also a thinly veiled excuse for me to talk about my favourite episode ever, The Doctor's Wife. The Doctor's Wife, written by Neil Gaiman, is the 4th episode of Series 6 of Doctor Who, and in my humble opinion, the pinnacle of the show ever. Like, literally unmatched. So, if you don't agree with me, obviously that's sound, and if you do agree with me, obviously you're a legend. In the episode, the Doctor's lured into the bubble universe by some sort of planet-sized entity with the promise of finding more Time Lords, thanks to the help of one of these bad boys, which I bought when I was a kid, and I still have it, because just don't throw anything out, especially something as cool as that, you know. Once they're there, the entity steals the TARDIS, leaving it trapped in the body of Sir Anne Jones, which is mental, and it's the sort of stuff that Neil Gaiman is just absolutely thriving on, because what an inspired choice. And Sir Anne Jones smashes it as well. From like the very first scene, she's just boss. Anyway, you've seen it, you know what happens. Let's move on. The Moth Sailor is known for having a fairy tale vibe, and Gaiman, being the master of the fantasy genre and lifelong Doctor Who fan that he is, comes in and smashes it straight out the gate, resulting in an episode that not only fits the established tone, but is also an 100% authentic Neil Gaiman story. It's hard for me to really articulate what makes this episode so perfect without just saying like every single thing about this episode, which wouldn't be very interesting to watch. Or maybe it would, but that's not what I'm going to be doing. Firework there. So before we move on, let me just sum up by saying this episode is unbelievable in every way. I'd go as far as to call it immaculate. Gaiman comes in and writes the perfect Doctor Who story on his first attempt. He's literally just that good. One of the things Gaiman excels at is making interesting characters, and this episode is no exception. First off, we've got Auntie and Uncle, patchwork people. A really intriguing concept that is just classic Neil Gaiman. Are they the best characters ever? No, let's be honest. But they'll do whatever House asks them, and that gives House a real sense of like power, and like really makes him out to be a threat from the start. He's made out to be even more scary when he has no use for them, and he just drop dead. And to be fair to the actors, they pull it off amazingly. Like, it's funny, but it's also like terrifying because they literally just drop dead, and then the Doctor and Idris are alone. More importantly though, they bring a sort of weird little freak vibe to the episode that I feel like most episodes are severely lacking. A good example of another weird little freak in the show is Ribbons from It Takes You Away. Now there's an episode that understands the importance of just having like a weird little freak for no reason. I've separated Nephew from Auntie and Uncle mainly because he's not a patchwork person, but also because the episode does the exact same thing. He gets off with House and just terrorises Amy and Rory for like half an episode, and you know what? He's like nightmare fuel. Like, they took the Ood, they went, you know, the Ood are a peaceful race, even though every time we see them they turn out to be evil. Meets the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, oh my god, an Ood. That's amazing, I love the Ood. And then he turns out to be evil again, but it's not his fault, to be fair. Like, he seems sound, but House has other ideas for him, so yeah. And then he just gets atomised by the TARDIS. Not ideal for Nephew, but it does give us one of the most goes hard lines ever, when the Doctor's like, another who that failed to save. Like, I mean, my performance of it's not quite as good as Matt Smith's, but, you know, that line is unbelievable. Another interesting thing about Nephew is that he was never meant to be an Ood. It was just budget constraints made it so that they had to choose and exist a monster. And Neil Gaiman was like, well, the Oods are literally the goats. Like, let's just throw an Ood in. And you know what? Couldn't have picked a better one. Imagine if he'd picked like a Sontaran or something. Just get on your nerves, wouldn't it? But an Ood got a charm and a whimsy to it. So, yeah. Another 10 out of 10 choice for Neil Gaiman. House is a brilliant antagonist and it's incredibly well written and terrifying throughout. Like, you really feel that this entity is just like the most unhinged, unhuman thing ever. And he's just out. I mean, he's just out to have a good time, really. He just wants to scran and stuff. But he's also a dickhead. So, you know, he's just gonna torture Amy and Rory. Kills Rory, fair enough, who doesn't? You know, then gets the ball rolling. We bring back a classic TARDIS interior, and by classic, I mean the Tennant one, not an actual classic one. But the Tennant one could be considered the most classic. Depends who you ask. And I've probably annoyed people calling it the Tennant one because it's also the Eccleston one. So let's just meet halfway and call it the RTD one. Honestly, I could have watched 2 hours of Michael Sheen's disembodied voice haunting Amy and Rory down the corridors of the TARDIS while just the maddest shit's happening to them. Like, that alone makes for a good episode. And on top of all that, we've got the Doctor speaking to the TARDIS. Like, unbelievable. Where does Neil Gaiman get his ideas? The Corsairs are a funny one because they don't actually appear in any episodes unless you encounter retcon where they're the shopkeeper from the Sarah Jane Adventures, which I do because it's a great idea and, you know, I like both those characters. And the parrot is cool, so, you know, why not? Nevertheless, I really like this character, and he went on to appear in a short story written by Neil Gaiman during lockdown, and you guessed it bangs. Lights went off on the box here, but flickering one. Plus, they've got that as a sick ass tattoo on every regeneration. So what I'm saying is, more Corsair content please. Hooniverse Agenda 101, the Corsair TV show, written by Neil Gaiman. Make it happen. I've saved the best for last because you can't really top the TARDIS, can you? It immediately just feels so natural that you instantly believe that, yeah, that is the TARDIS. This character has lived through every single adventure the Doctor has been on since the very beginning, which due to some selfish bellend is now the Daleks. How fun. Gaiman gives Idris the most emotionally devastating exit of the entire show, except for maybe Regenerations. It brings me to tears literally every single time I watch it. I'm not even messing. It's the perfect ending for a perfect character in a perfect story. Gaiman is a lifelong Doctor Who fan, and you can tell just by watching the episode. The love he has for the show is displayed in every scene, in every character, and in every line. But not only that, Neil Gaiman is one of my favourite writers of all time, second only to the king of telly himself, Russell T Davies. Because I'm a Doctor Who fan. A couple of years ago, I read a book by Neil Gaiman called Art Matters, which is this book right here. And in it, he talks about what it was like when he was just an aspiring writer, you know, before he was the massively successful household name he is today. In the book, Gaiman said that he never really had a plan for how he was going to become a writer. At the time, he just had a list of things of what he wanted to do. And on that list was write an episode of Doctor Who. And that really stuck with me. See, when I first read this book, I was at university studying creative writing, and I didn't really have a plan of what to do. But, like Neil Gaiman, I did have a list. And seeing that he'd not only accomplished everything on his list, not only wrote an episode of Doctor Who, but wrote the best episode of Doctor Who ever, I just find that endlessly inspiring. It also made me realise I probably should have a plan, which is one of the reasons that I went on to do a master's degree in screenwriting after I graduated. Which in itself is one of the biggest reasons why I barely ever upload videos, even now. And now as in like when I was writing the script, not right now. I've got a 28 slide long PowerPoint presentation on a TV show pitch to be working on. But that's a problem for future me, which is me now, and I've already sorted it, so don't even worry. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you're upset that I barely ever upload, which I doubt anyone is, you've got Neil Gaiman to blame. Thanks for watching.